There we go.
All right, good morning and welcome. While we get people in to get started, we're going to have you introduce yourself in the chat. So if you could please introduce yourself, include your role, grade level, district, and a memorable math moment with children. Welcome, welcome. We have people coming into the room. Thank you for being here on the first day of summer. And we're so excited to have you. We're going to have you introduce yourselves in the chat. So please include your role, grade level, district, and a memorable math moment with children. All right, so as people are coming in, we're going to just ask that you introduce yourself into the chat. Awesome, we have Yvette. She's the first grade teacher from Selma Unified. Awesome, from the Central Valley. Great to have you, Yvette. And Kim is a kindergarten teacher. She's currently building a shade structure to keep an ice cube from melting. Oh, that's her favorite memorable moment with students. That's awesome, very cool. All right, and we have Julia. Thank you, Megan, Michelle. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Awesome. It's really exciting to see people from all over the state. I love this. Seeing kiddos make that aha moment in math is one of those memorable moments that's being shared. Taking risks, so many math moments. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourself. I know with the webinar format, we can't see you all, and so we're going to try to connect multiple times throughout our session in the chat. So thank you, and please be active. If it were up to us, we could see you all and we'd be doing lots of breakouts, but in 55 minutes, we'll be leveraging the chat as much as possible. Awesome, I see a K-5 math intervention teacher, another first grade teacher from San Diego. Awesome, Math TOSA, math specialist. Well, thank you all so much for being here. My name's Christine Roberts. Continue introducing yourself in the chat. And I'm joined by Stephanie Amata. So Stephanie, we can go ahead and go to our slide where we'll introduce ourselves a little bit. Thank you all for being here. Happy Friday. Currently, I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA, and formerly I was a teacher and math specialist in the Central Valley for Tulare City Schools, Dinuba Unified, and Tulare County Office of Ed. And currently, I work with California Education Partners as a program manager where we support school districts across the state, specifically with preschool to third grade math. And Stephanie, will you introduce yourself?
I started out in Dinuba Unified as a classroom teacher, and now I get to be our TK5 district math coach and work across grade levels. And I've been doing that for the last 6 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. Stephanie and I get to work together. And one of the things we wanted to do today is we're actually representing the California Mathematics Council. We're both CMC members, have learned so much from the California Math Council. So I'll put our slides in the chat and you'll be able to click on this slide to learn more about CMC. The California Math Council hosts 3 annual conferences, one in the southern section in Palm Springs, one in the central section, and one in the northern section at Asilomar and Monterey. So we're here today on behalf of CMC. We're so thankful for everything we've learned from CMC and just want to be able to give back on behalf of CMC. So thank you for joining us. Awesome. All right. So today we're going to do Power Up Place Value K2. We have 3 goals for this session. The first is we want to explore how to support children to develop a deep and connected understanding of place value that really builds out of counting. So I saw some really great examples here today, how counting is one of those early memorable skills. And our hope is to make that connection between counting and place value. Throughout our session, we're going to examine student thinking through videos, through student work to really think about how does place value understanding develop over time? And then lastly, we want you to think about and really think about how to use what you've learned today as you move forward with your young students, whether that's tomorrow because you're in a preschool setting and you get to see your young people tomorrow, or you're at summer school, or if it's in the fall. So that's our goals for the day. Awesome. Still reading some of those awesome math moments. Today, if you would keep your microphone on mute until you're ready to speak. I do believe that if you want to speak, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. The webinar format is not as familiar to me as a regular Zoom session, so I hope that will work. But we would really love for you to be engaged in the chat, and just please be responsible and respectful there. We're all here to learn. And lastly, just stay curious, and we hope you have a great time. We're going to launch a poll real quickly because in addition to getting to meet you a bit in the chat, we wanted to see which grade spans or grade ranges folks are coming from. Awesome. Okay, and so far it looks like we have about almost 70% participation, just over 70%. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll and share it with you all. All right, so you should be able to see the poll results now. So we have 5 people from pre-K, 4 people from TK, 6 kindergarten teachers, 10 first grade teachers, 7 second grade teachers, 6 third plus, 14 coaches, and 4 administrators. Thank you all for being here. And with that, we're going to dive right in. All right, so on the next slide, what we're going to do, we have a really great range of folks here today. We want to do kind of a before and after. So we're going to give you a quick 2 minutes to jot some thoughts about what is place value. So when you think about place value, what is place value? Jot a few ideas. Awesome. And some people are adding those to the chat. You're welcome to do so. And also don't feel like you have to, but keep that jot thoughts here. And our goal is by the end of the session to really expand what your initial thoughts about place value are. And so we hope at the end, we're going to have you revisit this, and we'd love to have you add to, edit, or revise your thinking. So lots of great ideas so far, seeing that each digit represents a value. Place value is a shorthand for writing large numbers using digits, understanding how the place of a digit changes the value, and base 10 blocks are definitely part of place value. So we're going to continue to expand on this idea throughout our session together. And with that, I want us to watch a video about Daniel. And Daniel was asked to count a collection of 31 pennies. What we'd like you to do is in the chat as you watch or after you watch Daniel, just share with us, what is it that you notice about what Daniel does? And what does this tell us about his place value understanding? All right, let's watch Daniel.
Check out this collection, Amy. You know what those are? Yeah, good job. Can you count them for me? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 31. Wow, how many did you have? 31. What a great collection of pennies you made. So, do you think that you could make piles of 10 from your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Nice. How many piles of 10 did you make?
3,
3. And then what?
1 more.
1 left over. So how many do you have now in your collection? How many pennies do you have?
1,
How many do you have all together if you counted all of your pennies?
30, 40.
10, 20, 30, 40? Nice job. Let's put those back away.
Awesome. Awesome. Great ideas in the chat. So even a question, did he see the numerals? So no, Daniel didn't see the numeral. He was given the collection of pennies and he counted them. And then the interviewer was asking questions. And at the end, she decided to ask some questions. I think some people in the chat noticed, like he touched the pennies, he had cardinality, he had one-to-one correspondence, a lot of great noticings about the counting principles. And we learned a lot about Daniel's thinking through watching him count. Then the question was, can you make groups of 10? And I think a lot of you noticed that he didn't necessarily have any particular organization besides kind of moving them into a circle, which might have started out as a line, but he didn't have enough space. So it curved all the way around and kind of looked like an apple even, right, at the end with a stem. But then that question about, can you make groups of 10 with your pennies? And we learned a lot more about what Daniel knows when he made groups of 10. So what else does Daniel know? Yeah, he separated each group of 10, Jennifer's pointing out in the chat. He counted by 10s really well, actually, 10, 20, 30. But what happened when he skipped to the 1, right? That 4th pile, he kept counting by 10s. What a really nice noticing that Jennifer and Nancy are bringing up in the chat, that Daniel can count by 10s, right? But it's hard for him to transition between counting by 10s to counting by 1s. And we actually see that with young people quite a lot, right? And so it's great to know he can count by 10s, but once he starts doing that, then he counted 40 pennies. So a lot of nice place value understanding and counting knowledge that we learn about Daniel from this example. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stephanie, and she has another student video for you and then some student work.
So in Dinuba, we've been working on counting collections. For the last few years, teachers have really dug in, and we've learned a lot about how students think about numbers starting as early as TK and how that develops over time. So this video is from a kindergarten classroom. You'll hear it probably sounds a lot more like the places you're in than the last video we watched, which was more interview style. Just a note, as you're listening, when you first start listening, you're going to hear a very loud counting. That's actually a student in the back. And if you listen carefully, you can start to hear, I think it's about 10 seconds in, the student that we're actually watching in the front count. While you're watching the video, same as Daniel, what do you notice the student with the clothespins doing? While you're watching the video, it might also be interesting to glance back and see the variety of representations that are going on. But we're going to look and see, like, when a student is driving the representation, what does that look like and what thinking is going on here?
1 of 5, 1 of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 1 and an 8.
All right. So one other thing I forgot to point out before we watched the video, she does have the number 15 written on her paper before she had already counted, and now she's creating her representation. So what did you notice about how she's creating her representation? What kind of organization do you see, and what kind of counting do you see going on there? I see where she's drawing the tally marks, and it sounds like you're saying she's doing them for each clothespin. She's not doing any grouping yet. And there's something that happens at the end. And I was sitting with the student when she did it. She got to the end and she kind of paused. I think the last number she said was 14. And there were 2 clothespins left. And she kind of held them in her hand and went, And so she noticed something about her representation and her count that was going on. What do you think she noticed? And I'll go ahead and play it one more time because it's a pretty short video.
1 of 5, 8, 9,
So it's a little hard to see. We're on a webinar. We're not all in the room together, but sitting with the student, I learned a lot about her thinking. I had watched her count the clothespins. As she was moving, she was creating a strategy for recording these clothespins. She'd move one, she'd draw a line. When she got to the end of the representation, it actually helped her because her original count was off by 1, and she was holding those 2 clothespins in her hand, knowing that something was wrong. And so this is the beauty of counting collections in Dinuba Unified. We're learning so much about student thinking at a greater depth than they would have previously by watching these interactions, creating representations. So in the next slides, we're going to go through this range of representations as students move from counting collections and starting to learn how to record and organize and efficiently and accurately.
1 of 5, 8.
There we go. So this is a student in TK, Eliana. And what do you notice about this child's strategy for her representation? There are some teacher notes on there. I wrote the words sticks and pom-poms. Yeah, so she's counting by 1. She's not grouping yet. Does it look like she's organized? Do you see an organization there? And I see that some of the representations, they match what she's counting. So she's counting sticks, and so we see some lines. She's counting pom-poms, and we see some circles. So it does seem like this means something to Eliana. She understands what she's counting. These representations mean something to her. We see some organization in these vertical lines. And so we're starting to see, this organization of count. What do you notice about what the student knows about place value? Yeah, so that organization tells us she knows something about numbers and that they should be organized. So I'm going to go to this next one. So now that student was in TK. Now we're getting into kind of the kindergarten first range. What do you notice about these? We're starting to see some grouping. The grouping isn't always in tens right off the bat. If you're familiar with the counting principles, subitizing is when we can see a number, usually 5 or less, and I just see it, I don't have to count it. So sometimes these groups like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that we see younger kids make, a lot of times that's really helpful to do those before tens, because when I look at my groups, I can see 3, and I know that every group has 3 without having to methodically count each one, which we see in the other example. It looks like they're trying to make groups of 10, but maybe those groups of 10 are a little bit of a stretch right now. That image in the corner, that's actually a 10 frame. The student was using 10 frames to organize, and they tried to include them in their drawing, and they realized, this is really difficult to do. So then they switched to those groups. So here's another example. Now we're getting more into the first grade range. Oh, and I noticed on the last one, we noticed the groups of 3, some of the boxes were different. And so kids are working out some spatial reasoning there and trying to figure out how to make them all fit. So in this example, we have some more grouping. What do you notice about these students and what they know about place value? Oh, yes. And this is from a range of examples across a range of classrooms in our district. So we're seeing tens and ones, like distinctive grouping. We understand that there's a power in these groups of 10 and we're able to harness it for counting. We're seeing in the drawings, they're using numbers, pictures, and some words. Oh, and we're also noticing, kind of like Daniel when he counted the tens, and then when he got to the one, he said 40. We're kind of seeing the same thing with Melissa Villegas's example where she's counting by tens to 100, and then something happens there when we cross over 100 where we start to lose a little bit. In Melissa's example, she actually used another tool, the tens and ones chart, to demonstrate her thinking because she knew that 101, 102 wasn't quite right. So then she recorded her thinking another way because she was like, I don't quite know the number yet, so I'm going to show it this way too. And that's why having these multiple representations available are so helpful. Yeah, and I wonder the same thing about her final count. We had collected these, Molly, that's an excellent question. And the nice thing about counting collections and having the students represent in this way is we can go back with their drawing. Even after all the collections are put away, we can come back and we can talk about their drawing and ask those questions if we can't do it in the moment. All right, so we have one more. So these are two more students. These are second graders. What do you notice about these two examples? We have Araceli and Melanie. So here we're definitely seeing even more sophisticated grouping, thinking about place value. In the last example, we were seeing more consistent tens and ones. On the right, it's definitely more clear where the groups of hundreds are. With Melanie, do we see groups of hundreds in Melanie's example? Oh, and I see someone said Melanie appears to be counting coins. We were in the classroom. Those boxes were actually these plastic trays, and the circles were cups. They only 6 cups fit on a tray, and she had 10 objects in each cup. Oh, and I see Dennis pointed out that Melanie, her loops are the groups of 100. I see someone else said Melanie grouped 2 groups of 100. What's beautiful about these examples in Dinuba as we go across classrooms is the representations are so varied, which for us is such a healthy sign for student thinking, because that means this is definitely student driven. There's no way a teacher taught this many different ways to do things. And so when it's student driven, you'll see this variety of representations. And when you go back and ask the students, they can authentically tell you what they understood because it came from their thinking. Christine, is there anything else you'd like to add before I move on to the next example?
I think the only thing I'd like to add, I added it to the chat, but I don't know if people noticed. I love that when Stephanie and I have been working together with teachers in Dinuba, we've actually shown this range of student work to them so they can really see how student thinking progresses over time, not only within a grade level, but across grade levels. And then the second thing I would point out is that I think it really blew some teachers' minds when we were talking about the tens and ones chart on the previous slide. And the student correctly said there were 12 tens and 5 ones, right? So getting beyond this idea that place value is just about place and digit to understanding that place value is about 10 ones make a 10, 10 tens make 100. How would we apply that to 12 tens? What does it mean to have 12 tens? Can we see 12 tens in the picture? And really making those connections, I thought was really, really powerful.
Yeah, and the other thing is this is a this takes a lot of time. So we don't want to rush it. Like these examples, when we see Melanie and Araceli, they're beautiful and we're so excited because they're so much more efficient. But they're only more efficient and if they make sense to the student and they're ready for it. And so it's beautiful to watch the students progress through this journey and are given the time to really dig in and understand. So by the time we get here, the kids can confidently make these representations and they really understand the power in these numbers and the relationships. So this is another example of a student where they were kind of exploring this journey. They had gotten a little more abstract in class with the base 10 blocks and the tens and ones chart. And this student had actually been struggling a little bit with kind of misnaming numbers and struggling with the base 10 blocks. So we returned to counting collections. It's almost like an intervention tool to kind of go back and like, let's revisit counting collections so we can really remember what these digits mean and the relationships. And then let's bring in these more abstract things like base 10 blocks and tens and ones charts and see if we can like connect these ideas. And so she had done this beautiful mosaic with the pattern blocks and she had counted them all out. And then we asked her, hey, now that you have your count, can you go to the base 10 block box and can you get the base 10 blocks that would represent your count? And so she went and got those. And then we asked her to represent her count with a drawing as well. So her drawing is in the bottom left corner. And I'm just going to make it a little bigger so you can see it. So the top was actually, I'm sorry, we asked her to represent her count first before she got the base 10 blocks. So that's the top. Then we asked her to get her base 10 blocks and draw those as well. And so as she was doing this, she really started to like see those connections like, oh, this 10 rod, because sometimes we take for granted that those 10 rods, like they can count them. They definitely know there's 10, but something funny happens with kids where because they can grab it as a whole unit and they don't have to assemble it, they do sometimes get a little confused. And so she was able to like, oh, when I filled this whole 10 frame, it's this 10 rod. And all of a sudden it was like, we saw this light bulb with her and she got so excited that was able to figure this out. And so counting collections is such a nice tool to be able to go back because as we move through place value and we see those ideas get a little more abstract, we need something concrete or an experience to go back to really make sure we're understanding these relationships. And I think this one's yours, Christine.
You got it. All right. So as we're thinking about and kind of taking you through this journey today, we really wanted to talk about that sometimes we think about place value as a really isolated hundreds, tens, ones, or tens, ones, and just think about it in terms of the place value chart, or sometimes it can even get a little bit proceduralized in this top right corner where we see this really beautiful chart, but the students don't always think about the depth and the connections like Stephanie's mentioning, right? Same thing with base 10 blocks. We've all seen young people that you tell them the 10 rod is a 10 and they don't believe you because they can't put it together or take it apart, put it back together, all of those things, right? And we know that the operations rely on a really deep understanding of place value. And so what we wanted to do today is really to push on our thinking as adults, as teachers and leaders in our district systems to really think more that place value is about connections, right? It's really about building those bridges, like Stephanie's example of how she went back to counting collections with the group and teacher she was working with to then make sense of the base 10 representations is a really great example that we don't want to lose the math or the meaning in the representation or the tool. All right, Stephanie, so if we can go to the next slide. And so we wanted you to think about, right? So what do these students know about place value? They're also doing counting collections, but now they're doing package collections. So I'm going to pause for a second and get some ideas in the chat. So what we have here are boxes of pens, and each pen there are 11 packages of 12 pens each, and the goal is for the students to be able to figure out how many total pens there are. So what do these kiddos know about place value? Really nice. Molly lifted up that they know that 12 is a 10 and a 2, right? The left photo is they're grouping 2 boxes, right? So they've grouped their 2 boxes. They've recognized groups. They're decomposing and composing. They know that they can compose into tens and ones. And what I really love about this example is, as you see on the whiteboard with all of the tens being added and all of the ones being added, sometimes, for sake perhaps of efficiency, we as teachers might move them into adding the tens with tens and the ones with ones more procedurally. These students are actually kind of doing an invented algorithm where they're saying, we're going to add all the tens together, then we're going to add all the twos together. And Jennifer pointed out, it does really rely on some abstract thinking, but really thinking that is based on what they understand. Also, when we think about all the tens, like a question I would want to ask them is, oh, okay, great. I can see that you wrote all these tens here. Can you tell me how you added them up? I think they probably actually counted by 10, right? Although they showed that it's addition and it is addition, I think they probably said 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 110. And likewise, I think that's what they did with the twos as well. But I wouldn't know. Student work is great, but we actually can't know what the children are thinking unless we ask them some of those follow-up questions. Some really awesome noticings in the chat. So, right, Dennis is pointing out, oh, they added all the tens first, then they added all the ones, right? All of those things really show us their deep place value understanding, but also bridge to their later work with addition and subtraction, right? That really starts in the early grades and builds forwards. Yeah, really nice. They composed into tens and ones. All right. And so as we move forward, we wanted to show you another video where we're seeing a kindergarten. And Stephanie, I'll let you intro this young person because you were with him. So can you tell us a little bit more about Mateo?
Like Christine just mentioned, when you are able to ask, we're able to learn a lot about the depth of student thinking. So he had already counted his collection. I helped him carry it over the table. And then I was able to have him retell what he had done there and then also ask some follow-up questions to really see, like, what do you understand about place value?
40, and then 1, 2, 3. So that makes 43.
Can you count that one more time for me?
10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42, 43.
Why aren't these in a coffee filter?
It's because there's not 10.
There's not 10. Oh, okay. And then can you tell me about your drawing?
I drew it just like I did.
Okay.
I put 10. I put 10 in this, 10 in this, 10 in this, and 10 in this, and then I put 3 right here, just like I did right now.
Okay. So how many groups of 10 do you have?
4.
Okay. And how many did you have that weren't in a group of 10?
3.
Oh, very cool. And so how much did you count?
43.
Damn. Okay. And then one more question. What is this for?
It's telling you how many you counted.
Oh, okay. So this 4 right here, is it 4 of these?
No.
What is the 4?
It's 10, 20, 30, 40,
Oh.
41, 42, 43. 4 and 3, 43.
Very cool. Thank you. So I had asked some of those follow-up questions because I knew Mateo earlier in the year. I hadn't been in a while. So I just wanted to kind of really prod and see, like, do we really, like, how much do we really know about the digits for writing? So what did he know? Yeah, Mateo is a great explainer. Like, he was really sure about his thinking. And I like how Molly put he in all caps, because I think she was emphasizing, like, he knew in his heart of hearts his grouping. It was his idea. And I'll throw this back to you, to Christine, to transition to the next slide.
It sounds great. Thanks, Stephanie. Really nice too that Janet said, like, he doesn't quite know yet that the 4 represents 40, but he could tell us that the 4 meant the 4 coffee filters with 10 each, and that the leftovers were, and he doesn't know yet that those are ones, right? But remember, he's a kindergartner. So as we're thinking about this journey, right, and we know that our standards are the floor, not the ceiling, I think this is a really great illustration as well about how he's developing these initial place value understandings. They're not necessarily necessarily fully concrete yet. He's not just saying, oh, the 4 is 4 10s and the 3 is 3 1s. He truly has that depth of understanding that we're talking about. And so Yvette has a really great question. So are they just given?
Christine froze, so I'm gonna fill in just a second. So
So session, oh, am I back? Sorry.
Sorry, you cut out for just a second. So you started to explain to Yvette what's going on here.
Okay, we think I'm back. Exactly. Sorry, let's see if I don't. So collections, and counting collections is a task or a routine, an instructional activity that our teachers use throughout the year, and it really grows with the students. So as Stephanie mentioned, she had seen Mateo and been in his class early in the year when he wasn't yet making groups of 10s, right? We don't want to push groups of 10 before they're ready. And here, when she went back to visit Mateo, she's able to see all the growth he's had and this depth of understanding that he has. But the initial instructional activity is counting collections that they started with. And we've been really using it as a bridge to support place value understanding across grade levels. Really nice comment, Michelle. Thank you. And I apologize for my spotty internet. All right, so the next slide. Thank you for all the awesome shout outs for Mateo. So earlier we lifted this up, and I think one of the other panel or participants said, oh, it was really great how they saw the 12 10s and the 5 1s. And one thing we try to do is really connect the hundreds, tens, and ones chart or the tens and ones chart to the representation, because what we know is our young kiddos in the 3rd grade and beyond on the cast will really have to answer questions like, and we've been playing with this idea with teachers, and it's so cool to say, if we asked how many 10s are in this number 213, the response we typically get is 110. There's 110 in 213. But actually, how many 10s are in 213? Yeah, exactly. There's actually 21 10s. And so what we've been doing is putting these representations side by side and saying, oh, okay, so where do we see 21 10s? We can ask a further question. How many ones are in 213? That's very different than what's the digit in the ones place, right? And so those questions really get us to be able to probe student thinking quite a bit. And if there are 213 ones in the number 213, can we see that in the picture, right? Where do we see 213 ones? And we see that in all of the little circles that are earlier. We think it was loops showed the groups of 100. And again, we have that sense making here. All right, and really develop is that place value is more, is about more digits and places. It's really about this size make 100, right? 10 hundreds make 1,000. All of these awesome things. And Jennifer lifted up that this idea that in their IM curriculum, you have counting collections as well. And that is also the curriculum that Dinuba is using. So really awesome. All right, so we're gonna go to our last jot thoughts. And what we want us to do, what we'd like everyone to do, is I'd like you to revisit your initial definition of what is place value. And what I'd like you to do is take the opportunity, oh, sorry, I missed that, but that's okay. I'd like you to take the opportunity to add to your initial jot thoughts and really add to or revise your thinking. So now when you think about place value, what is place value? Please feel free to add to, edit, or revise. And then you can add those ideas to the chat. Love that. Cheryl saying it's not just hundreds, tens, and ones, but rather the connection between hundreds, tens, and ones. Katie lifts up this idea of grouping. Grouping is super, super important. And Dennis is making the connection between concrete, representational, and abstract. And not only does that happen within a grade level, but it happens across grade levels. Really nice. Grouping matters, right? And even when those young people group by threes, we don't want to discourage grouping by threes, because grouping by threes is super helpful for developing concepts of multiplication, right? But for place value, groups of 10 are really helpful for place value concepts. So there is value in grouping by other amounts as well. Yeah, I love this idea, this connection between place value and number sense, right? So if students have a really, really well-developed understanding of place value, they have usually a stronger number sense, and vice versa.
Oh, I love Jill's 7-year-old explanation.
Yeah, that's great. It says my 7-year-old sitting next to me, and he says it is ways to regroup and get bigger numbers. Really, really nice. Awesome. All right, so with that, Stephanie, if you go back one slide, there were a couple of notes I missed just because I couldn't see it on my screen. But the last thing we want to say here before we do our next step protocol is that when we think about student representations, and I think you all pointed this out really, really well. And Janet even said, making the connection with real world objects and numerical representation. So this idea that if they count sticks, they're probably going to represent with lines. If they count pom-poms, they might represent with circles, right? The idea is that student representation should make sense to the student, right? And that they are able to explain it, very much like we saw with Mateo. Mateo really clearly understood that he had put those dimes in groups of 10, and those were in the coffee filters, and he could explain to Stephanie why some dimes were in the coffee filter and why some dimes were not in the coffee filter. Our hope is that the representation matches the math, right? So we really want that whatever they represent matches their math, which we saw earlier with the young girl who she kept counting and making her tallies, and she's like, uh-oh, something's off, because when she counts them and when she represents them, she wasn't getting the same number. So it's a really nice opportunity for students to make sense of, if I'm trying to represent an amount, a quantity, it should represent, or it should match what I counted. And lastly, I think a lot of people kind of throughout the progression of the student work saw that student organization might look different than our organization, and it grows over time, right? And so we really just emphasize that however they represent their quantity, it should demonstrate some thoughtfulness about organization. And originally that might be that everything fits on the paper, right? That spatial awareness. And over time, that might be that they understand that they can group in tens, and 10 tens makes 100. Really nice. Okay, so looking
Just
at
like
our
to add
time.
real quick, Christine, that the best way to learn about student thinking and counting and the ways they do this is to have lots and lots of conversations across context. So if you're in a scenario that you can go in and have conversations with kids, every time I walk into a classroom, I learn something new about with the way kids assemble this idea of place value. And it's so informative to have a conversation with a child about their work.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think someone lifted up earlier that using these as formative opportunities, right? We are not giving young people quote unquote quizzes, but each of these opportunities, like Stephanie says, is really this opportunity to have a window into their thinking. All right, so thank you for adding to your place value definition. The last thing we're going to do today, we thought we'd make it kind of fun and cute, but to think about 2 things as you plan for next steps. So think of a button. What is something you want to keep? So what's one idea that you want to keep top of mind and try in the next few days or the very beginning of the school year? And secondly, a coin. What's one thing you want to change based on what you learned? And I'm going to add that to the chat, and then we're going to ask that you think about your next steps and also add them to the chat. I love that all this talking about too, that the placement of the digits is like a code for figuring out, and that math and numbers is a sort of language. Agreed. Jennifer has a great point. We're not necessarily wanting them to draw unicorns, right? So you definitely have to have those conversations. We want it to make sense to them. We want them to have fun doing it. But we don't necessarily want them to draw 100 unicorns. Thank you for adding your buttons and coins to the chat. This is our 5-minute warning, so we are going to be wrapping up. So I'll move to that in just a second. But we also wanted to remind you, we would love it if you would fill out the survey for our session and provide us feedback. That would be really awesome. Really great buttons and coins in the chat. Thank you all so much. And Lisa just added the survey session, so I'm going to also recopy that and put that in the chat. I love Janet's button, being okay with their representation, even if they didn't make them the way that we would, right? And really seeing the value and what each young person represents with their map. Really nice. All right, so as we start to wrap up, really great ideas for your buttons and your coins. So thank you for sharing those in the chat, and I hope you've gotten some ideas from others as well. So as we wrap up, we just want to thank you for spending some of your summer Friday with us, and remind you as well that we'd love to connect with you at CMC, at some of our CMC conferences via email. We'll put all that information up as well. Awesome. And I will put our slides in the chat again so that you can access those. I did want to also give a shout out for my organization that I work for, California Education Partners. We focus on supporting school districts with pre-K to 3rd grade coherence, particularly in math. So I put our website there as well. If you do work with districts and want to see how we can get connected, we bring districts together to talk about math pre-K3 throughout the state. And someone didn't see the survey link, so let me copy and paste that again below. And I think it's my,
and while Christine is pasting link, we do have resources linked at the end of the slides if you'd like to dig in more. The DREAM website, the first resource there listed, wonderful resource if you're wanting to explore county collections and what it looks like in all different contexts. You can look at their resources there. We also have some other resources too. The other one, the Choral Counting and Counting Collections link, if you wanted to learn more about counting collections. And Berkeley Everett has a really nice blog post for showing how this idea of place value will progress through all grade levels up into the upper grades. So you can kind of see where this work is going. Let's see, it's not coming.
Yep, I'm going to put the link one more time. I'm going to put just the link because it's not making it clickable. I think you may have to copy and paste it, and I'm not sure why. Let me try one other thing. Thank you for letting us know that the link was being tricky. And I just did it again because I went to it, I copied and pasted it, and then got this expanded link. So that is in the chat. And our email addresses are also in the slide deck as well. Well, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for learning together with us. And we're super excited about your day at the Early Math Symposium. And feel free to reach out. All right. Thank you so much. Lisa Grant is also telling us that the survey link is also available in the lobby. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the symposium. All right, thanks again. All right, Stephanie, you want to go to the backstage? And I just updated this slide with our email addresses. Awesome, thank you, Jennifer.